this text. I had a doctor tell me one day that when you're having joint problems, it's good when you do your exercise to walk backwards. You ever tried to walk a mile backwards? It's a little awkward. And it might be a little awkward for us to walk backwards through this text, but we're going to try it anyway. So we're going to start at the end of Colossians chapter 4. The last verse we read was the 18th verse of chapter 4. Here's how Paul ended the letter. I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand. Remember my imprisonment, and grace be with you. You might remember that when the Apostle Paul wrote Galatians, he said to them in that letter, see with what large letters I wrote you in my own hand. And here, when he wrote Colossians, he wanted to make sure that they knew it was personal. He didn't have a scribe write this or put it down. He cared so deeply that he hand-wrote it himself. And the believers in Colossae knew that this was personal. A friend of mine tells about an elderly widow that he knew here in the state of Indiana, and she was going blind. But even though she was going blind, she still wrote her children a letter every single week. And this was way before Facebook and email and texting and Twitter. And she would write this letter with a thick black marker on unlined paper. And she could only fit about 12 words on each page. But obviously her kids knew her handwriting, and they knew how much she cared about them to write so regularly. The people at the Colossian church knew how much Paul cared. And this is personal stuff. And since it's personal stuff, it's going to give us some insight about our own relationships and our own friendships. I think this passage of Scripture speaks to something that every one of us in this room long for. Close relationships. Last week we talked about Jesus' first families. Today I want to talk about Jesus' first friendships. Jesus' first relationships. What do they look like? What does a relationship look like when Jesus is first? Well, let me just start with the obvious. Jesus' first relationships are always going to be about people moving from shallow to deep. Jesus' first relationships always going to be about people moving from shallow to deep. This is a big deal because close relationships is what most of us are longing for. And the friendships and the relationships that are described in these verses are the kinds of relationships that many people wish they had. That people, even if they don't know it, are crying out for this. And yet some of us live our entire lives without experiencing what we're going to consider today. Close, Jesus-first relationships. Maybe these people just haven't met the right friends, or maybe they haven't been the right kind of friend, or invested the effort. Life is busy, people are people, we're flawed, and so we don't have those relationships that we want to have, and some of us blame other people. Some of us blame ourselves, and we blame the circumstances. Some people even blame their church. Well, my church is too big, or there are too many cliques there, or I don't have any friends, or I just don't fit in there, or nobody ever calls me. And maybe you felt that way at times. We all perhaps felt that way at times. So what do real Jesus-first relationships and friendships look like? Well, I'll tell you this. They're always moving from shallow to deep. Have you ever read the opening cover page in our church photo directory? Maybe you have one of these, maybe you don't. But the cover page, a lot of people skip over it, go right to the pictures. The cover page says, you hold in your hands a tool that the Apostle Paul never had. You have the most recent edition of the pictorial directory for Mount Gilead Church. When I thought of the benefits of having this church family album, my mind immediately went to the last chapter of the book of Romans. In the closing section of Romans 16, Paul basically composes an abbreviated church directory. The names are different than the kinds of names we use. I don't know anyone named Andronicus or Ampliatus or Tryphosa or Olympus or Phlegon or Urbanus, but those are among the 30-plus names of people that Paul recognizes and greets as he lists individuals in the church at Rome. Sort of a Rome Christian church congregational listing, and the only thing missing is the pictures. I can only imagine what a man named Epaenetus or a woman named Narcissus looked like. And instead of being listed in alphabetical order, the list starts with the one who has the distinction of being the first convert in Asia. Well, this publication is in alphabetical order. It contains pictures of members, friends, and families at the church at Mount Gilead. Think of it as a spiritual family photo album. Use it, treasure it, pray over it, and enjoy it. We could have just as easily pointed to the last chapter of Colossians instead of the last chapter of Romans. This is almost like a partial Colossian Christian church directory, but it's more than a membership list. You can't read this text in Colossians chapter 4 without sensing the depth of relationship here.
Yeah.
Remember to move noisier under the cover. Yeah, we're gonna try to.
Here's a walking trail and frisbee golf course, and as we come around we'll see the entrance to the property. And now we're on the side of the building. This is the front side of the building.
That bottom is sagging.
We're on the back side of the building. This is what the property looks like. Looks like a garden. Frisbee golf course. And back around. 2 modulars on the back for classrooms, adult classrooms.